Hello.
Oh,
Oh, you can hear me?
yeah, yeah.
Very good. So I posted a link on the WhatsApp for anyone to test it.
कौन सा लिंक है वो?
YouTube का लिंक डाला है मैंने। अभी मुझे पता ये करना है कि ये रिकॉर्ड हो रहा है, लाइव जा रहा है कि नहीं जा रहा है। तो
ओ,
कोई कर
अभी
देगा?
डाला क्या? हाँ दे। नहीं नहीं नहीं, 1 मिनट, लेट मी चेक। AI बिगनिंग सेशन April 13 वो वाला, हाँ यूट्यूब देखूँ
हम्म
क्या?
YouTube का लिंक डाला है मैंने। अभी मुझे पता ये करना है कि ये रिकॉर्ड हो रहा है, लाइव जा रहा है कि नहीं जा रहा है। तो
ओ,
कोई
अभी डाला क्या? हाँ दे। नहीं
फर्स्ट
नहीं नहीं,
क्लास,
1 मिनट,
फर्स्ट
लेट
क्लास।
मी चेक। या इट्स
वेरी
गोइंग
गुड,
ऑन।
वेरी गुड। तो अभी क्या है कि
बिगनिंग
जो
सेशन
लोग
April
इसको
13 वो वाला यूट्यूब।
लिंक को यूज़ करेंगे वो ऑफलाइन भी देख पाएंगे।
या दैट्स गुड।
वेलकम मोहन जी।
गुड मॉर्निंग सर।
गुड मॉर्निंग जी, गुड मॉर्निंग। देखो आज हमने यूट्यूब पे डाल ही दिया है इस सेशन को।
ओह रियली? सर एक क्वेश्चन है, ये ओपन एआई का या जो एपीआई की ये फ्री कैसे मिल सकती है कहीं से?
ओपन एआई इज़ नॉट फ्री। ओपन एआई अगर आपको चाहिए तो उसको सब्सक्राइब करना पड़ता है, उसका प्रो कुछ ऑप्शन खरीदना पड़ता है।
हाँ उसी के लिए बोल रहा था कुछ तो फिर तो कोई होता है वैसे इनवीडिया की एक की साइट पर ट्राई करा था, उन्होंने जो की दी थी वो काम कर रही थी, आई वाज एबल टू कॉल देयर मॉडल।
वेरी गुड।
फ्री था इनवीडिया की पे। लेकिन ओपन एआई का तो खैर फ्री है ही नहीं, ट्राई करा वो कुछ तो बोला सीक्रेट क्रिएट करने के लिए बोला, बट आई ट्राइड इट डिडंट वर्क। तो पूछा होगा और भी अदर अल्टरनेट है क्या किसी से, देयर मे बी फॉर एक्सपेरिमेंट हैंड्स ऑन इफ
हम्म
एनीबॉडी इज गिविंग फ्री। तो
हम्म। पता नहीं
हाँ
यार, पता करो।
हाँ, तो देखते हैं, कल कंपनी के अंदर ट्राई करते हैं, मैनेजर से बात करके ही कैन गिव पूरी।
चलो
Hey,
आज।
hi everyone.
हाय। देखो कौन है ये। गुरुजी नहीं आया अभी तक हमारे, इसलिए अटके हुए हैं हम लोग। आशीष जी आया जा रहे। आशीष जी क्या हाल है? लोग तो काफी है कि मनोज जी गायब है।
He messaged he's joining.
मनोज ने लिखा है स्टार्टिंग नाउ बट अभी तक आया नहीं है। संडे का कोरम अच्छा रहता है। क्या ऐसा करें कि सैटरडे वाले सारे लोगों को संडे को ही बुला लें?
Yeah, but मुश्किल है।
क्यों?
लेकिन I think because of timing reason they are in Saturday, right?
सम पीपल।
We can ask how many of them are interested. I mean, to merge one.
अल्टीमेट
But
ऑब्जेक्टिव इट्स टू हैव ओनली वन सेशन। ऐसा नहीं है कि दो सेशन करने में कोई मजा आ रहा है।
क्या है कि इंडियन जो लोग इंडिया में है वो लोग सैटरडे इवनिंग मतलब हमारा उधर सैटरडे इवनिंग होता है, राइट?
हाँ।
सो उनको संडे इवनिंग करना कितना अच्छा रहेगा,
हाँ तो पूछना तो पड़ेगा ही एक बार, इसीलिए मैं भी पूछ ही रहा था यहाँ पे कि जो लोग यहाँ पे हैं वो लोग तो संडे वाले ही हैं।
या
राइट। मनोज जी आप म्यूट पे हैं।
ये श्याम और मैं एक दूसरा लिंक ही जॉइन करके बैठे थे, पता नहीं वो मेरे से
वो सर आपने जो कैलेंडर भेजा था ना उसपे
हाँ,
पुरानी
वो
लिंक थी वो
कैलेंडर
मैंने
मेरा एक दूसरा लिंक है। ओके, सॉरी। थोड़ा सी गड़बड़ हो गया। ओके।
चलो, फॉर योर इन्फॉर्मेशन दिस सेशन इज बीइंग रिकॉर्डेड ऑन यूट्यूब।
ओ वाओ। ओके।
देखते हैं कितना लंबा रिकॉर्ड करता है नहीं करता है, क्योंकि मैंने चला तो दिया है रिकॉर्डिंग का सेशन। अब अगर उस पर लिमिट है कि 45 मिनट्स रिकॉर्ड करेगा या कुछ, तो 45 मिनट्स के बाद वो क्रैक कर देगा उसको, या क्या
ओके।
करेगा पता नहीं है। लेकिन हाँ, ये सेशन इस टाइम मेरी स्क्रीन पे जो आ रहा है दैट इज़ गोइंग लाइव।
ओके।
अगर कोई उस पर लिंक पे क्लिक करेगा जो मैंने लिंक पे भेजा है अभी, तो यू कैन सी इट लाइव एज वेल ऑन यूट्यूब विदाउट एक्चुअली बीइंग ऑन द सेशन।
ठीक है, देन विल बी केयरफुल। ओके, सो लास्ट टाइम हमने ये चैप्टर 4 किया था, और चैप्टर 4 का जो सेकंड सेक्शन है, आई वाज थिंकिंग दैट we'll just read it offline and we'll start with chapter 5 directly. But then when I read this section, it turned out to be like very good. It has a lot of information that I think we should go through. So yeah, let's finish this chapter 4 today, and then we can start chapter 5 next time. So in the first part of the chapter, we saw like some model evaluation techniques, what are the different metrics that you can evaluate a model for your application, right? Ab, in this section, they are talking about model selection. So evaluating a model is fine, but then there are hundreds of models available, right? How do you evaluate? How do you pick from all those hundreds of models? Like you cannot possibly uh, test the metrics or evaluate the metrics for all of them. So they have given a framework how you can narrow down from hundreds of models to the models that you select for your application. What is best for your application? So it says that the selection process for for models involves two-step process. First, figuring out the best achievable performance. Like you use whatever is the best model available, latest model, biggest model available, and see what is best achievable. And then mapping model along the cost parameter axis and choosing the model that gives the best performance for your works. So actually दोनों techniques हैं कि you first start with the most expensive, uh, biggest and like largest latest model, and then you start testing the smaller models. So because larger models cost more and smaller models cost less, so you want to get your job done with the least cost possible, right? So you kind of gradually like trickle down to the cheaper models. And then there are the other technique is also sometimes used that you start with a small model and then you gradually start using the bigger and bigger model and stop whenever your performances like your expectations are met. So for doing that selection, they say that there are some hard attributes and then there are some soft attributes. Hard attributes are things that are either not in your control or that like that are your hard criteria. You cannot compromise on that. So some examples that they have provided is like some things that are not in your control. What's the if let's say model is a hosted model, so or even for actually non-hosted like self-hosted models also this thing applies. What's the license? If license says that you cannot use it for commercial purpose, then and you have a commercial purpose, then that kind of uh, selects the model out. Same thing, what was the training data that was used? Maybe it's trained on some sensitive data that you do not want to be involved in. What's the model size, right? If let's say model size is very big, but you want to deploy that model to a small device, then that model is not a good fit. So there are some hard attributes through which you can filter out some models. And then there are soft attributes. Soft attributes are things that you can tweak, right? Things like accuracy, toxicity, or factual consistency. So these are the things that you can tweak by changing some parameters and figure out like if you tweak them enough, can you tweak them enough to meet your criteria? If you cannot tweak them enough to meet your criteria, then again the model is out. Uh, so first you need to come up with these hard and soft attributes for your model. Sham.
तो मेरा क्वेश्चन था कि मैंने कभी मॉडल परचेज तो नहीं किया है, तो ये प्राइवेसी एंड कंट्रोल, तो ये मॉडल प्रोवाइड किस तरह से मतलब ऑप्शन देते हैं, मतलब कि हाउ वी विल डिसाइड व्हाट काइंड ऑफ प्राइवेसी कंट्रोल दे आर प्रोवाइडिंग, व्हाट काइंड ऑफ ऑप्शन इन द रियल टाइम दैट यू हैव सीन.
Yeah. Actually, इस चैप्टर में बाद में बात करता भी इस बारे में. So there are many different kinds of models, all the way from commercial models that are only available through APIs and they don't provide any information. To all the way open source models. They say that this is open source for you to host, for you to use. They also open source the weights, so you can, if you want to, let's say, fine tune, you can do that. They also open source the data on which the model was trained. So if you want, you can like check if they use any sensitive data or not. That like, whether you're okay with that training data or not. And some model, the truly open source model, they also open up their model architecture and algorithms. So if you want, you can actually train the same model using the same or similar data yourself. So in सबके बीच में पूरा spectrum है. So some models they say that, oh, we'll only open weights, but we will not tell you which data we use for training. Like DeepSeek, for example, they provided all the weights. It's an open source model in that sense, but they don't actually give any detail about what data did they use to train or the model architecture. Llama models, they actually, on the other hand, they provide all the information available.
So one thing, Manoj, maybe. So when you are saying that tweaking, does that mean that we need to retrain the model or something? What is
No,
that?
no. So tweaking means like there are not always retraining. When you provide a prompt in an API, like not through like ChatGPT interface, but when you make an API call, you can actually provide some parameters like what should be the temperature, what should be the let's say perplexity threshold, what should be the accuracy or factual accuracy, factual consistency parameter. So these are the things that you can provide, and based on that, model can choose one output versus the other.
So it's a metadata for that model, basically.
Metadata for that prompt, I would say. So in every API call, every model API call, you have to provide those parameters.
Okay. I got it. Oh, okay, so it's basically kind of I am testing it, the model.
Yes. Yeah. You're testing the model, and you're seeing that, oh, if I give accuracy as 90%, does this meet my criteria? Do I need to up it to 95%, or if let's say for better performance, if I reduce it to 80%, is it still good enough for me? So you're testing on those soft attributes, and they're soft because it's not like a hard yes and no answer. You need to kind of tweak with different values and see if it fits your criteria or not. तो यहाँ पे इसने एक ये diagram दिया है, so I'll just explain that. So they're saying that it's a four-step process. Selecting a model among all the hundreds of models, you're selecting one model for your use case, right? So filter out by using hard attributes. So that's where you also make build versus buy decision. We'll also talk more about build versus buy decision later, but basically what it is are you going to host that model and to like even fine tune to some extent, or you're going to just uh, make an API call. So that's first decision based on the hard attributes. Then you use public benchmarks and leaderboards. So these are the like publicly available benchmarks on different criterias. If let's say at a very high level, let's say you have a selection job, you have some kind of a selection kind of a workload, or you have let's say code generation kind of workload. So on those higher attributes, you can figure out which models are good or bad just theoretically. Like you just You're not running any model, you're not running any specific uh, POC. Just based on public information, you're making that decision. And then you are when you have like handful of models filtered down, then you evaluate on those handful of models on your specific task. That on my task, how are these models performing, right? So that's where your private prompting and your own metrics comes in. And then online evaluation is like once you have deployed, you keep monitoring it. That I think there is a separate chapter for that. Radha?
Actually, what mean by the private prompts? I need to maybe to read it, but I'm just asking that where it exactly is.
Yeah, private prompt is like your own prompts. So how you're planning to use this model, right?
Mm.
So
Your own prompt, right? Based
your
on
own tests. Yeah,
yeah, okay,
yeah,
private
your own
prompt.
tests. Yeah.
Those are not the specific. Yeah, it makes sense. So in other words, the whatever we are saying, like whenever you're taking the model, start from your side, your requirement side. Like, how I can afford it, not my infrastructure or price wise, and then benchmark, then
Yeah.
something, four step, then take the relevant model for you, and then you're done.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, then let's come to model build versus buy. So the decision is like there are multiple decisions here. One is whether you want to self host or you want to just make an API call, and the sub decision into that is whether you want to use commercial model or host open source model. The commercial models are only available as APIs. Open source models are available both. You can host them yourself or you can use a service provider also. So then they're saying that there are many flavors within open source also. So some models are open source, some are open weight, and then there are nuances around model licenses. So ideal definition is that a model should be considered open only if its training data is also made publicly available. But people use this term open source model loosely. So sometimes they just like um, call a model open source while it's just open weight. And the difference is that, like I said before, right, that model has only provided you their weights parameters, like the output on after training, only that made available. They have not made available about like any information about their training data. So if they have not provided training data, first of all, you cannot evaluate it against your privacy policies. Second, like you cannot actually filter like oh let's say some data that you don't like to be included in training. You cannot do that kind of filtering. Ashish,
तो सर इसको एक मिनट
आशीष आपको कोई क्वेश्चन है? अरे या तो आशीष का माइक नहीं चल रहा है. संजीव, you had a question?
I have a question. You were saying, that training data is not open source. So in that case, we can still fine tune, right?
You can still fine tune. Yes, that's true. So yeah, you can still fine tune. Basically, fine tuning is updating the weights based on your own data, but
Right.
you cannot evaluate it for privacy policy. और एक दूसरा concern भी है कि and we'll talk. They talk about that later in this chapter also. Is that sometimes in training data they include the same data that's used for testing any benchmarks. जैसे आपने कहा कि ये particular benchmark में ये model जो है scoring very high, but they might have also included the same data that's used for testing that benchmark. So there might be some like, deliberate or unknowingly there might be some cheating involved.
Okay. So
Uh,
there's a point like, let's say, if I'm using any open source model and they would have done some breach as far as the privacy is concerned,
mm,
but while doing the fine tuning, I haven't done any breach, let's say.
yeah,
Right, and while doing the operations also, like when it is live, we are not breaching any privacy related issues, we are doing anonymization and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But while training, we don't know whether they have breached or not. So what are
Yeah.
the legal implications? Like
Yeah.
I can still say I'm just using the open source and I don't care. I mean, it's just a black box for me.
हाँ तो that's a very good topic. तो उसमें क्या है कि if there are any legal issues, you are responsible if you are self-hosting. If a cloud provider is hosting, then you can pass the blame to them. तो एक्चुअली इस चैप्टर में इसमें इन्होंने एग्जैक्टली इस पॉइंट पे आगे लिखा भी है that is one risk that you take, and that's why analyzing the training data is important for people who want to use open source models.
Listen, are you good? Am I audible now?
Yeah, Ashish, we can hear you.
Alright. So my question was, are there any examples where same company can give different flavor of models? कि भाई हमारा solution ऐसा है कि आप host भी कर सकते हो या फिर अपने मोबाइल पे भी यूज कर सकते हो और मे बी डिफरेंट फ्लेवर्स ऐसे भी एग्जांपल्स हैं ये
What about ChatGPT 3.5?
अच्छा डिफरेंट हाँ लोअर वर्जन वर्सेस बिगर वर्जन
Yeah, Apple does it Apple kind of made that model popular, that architecture popular. So Apple developed Protect model, smaller model they deploy on your iPhone,
हाँ
and bigger model they host in cloud. So iPhone can answer a lot of those questions locally, but if there is a complex question, then it calls the model hosted in the cloud.
थैंक यू
मोहन जी का एक क्वेश्चन है, उसके बाद अश्विनी जी का क्वेश्चन है।
So, sir,
Manish, या तो मेरा क्वेश्चन ये था कि इट्स वेरी सिंपल बेसलाइन के बारे में क्वेश्चन था because I'm very much inclined toward the CMMS space, which is computerized maintenance and all that. So if I want to go for some model, because right now I'm not finding many, right? How do I make sure that this model is, because I was just looking at the weight point of view, parameters point of view. Do they have or do they discuss any a kind of survey is not the right word. कुछ वो बताते हैं क्या कि हमारे अ, ये प्रोजेक्शंस हैं, इस प्रोजेक्शन के साथ हम इस एरिया में इतना कुछ कवर करते हैं, और हाउ डू आई मेक श्योर जैसे मेंटेनेंस के एरिया में इफ आई नीड टू गो दैट हाउ फार दे गो, हाउ इज द डाटा, राइट?
Yeah,
Do they have that kind of a weight, or how do I check that how good this data is as per my own parameter? Because हो सकता है ना कि मैं जिस डॉक्टर के पास जा रहा हूँ वो इंटरनल मेडिसिन तो हो पर मेरी प्रॉब्लम कुछ और ही हो, तो आई नीड टू गो टू स्पेशल डॉक्टर, राइट? It's not that one solution for all.
yeah. So actually, that's a very good point. So अभी इसमें discuss किया ना कि there are these public benchmarks and leaderboards that cover different areas, like broader areas.
Okay, I see
I
that.
don't know if there is some benchmark for maintenance, but we can they give a like long list of these benchmarks and leaderboards. Maybe some of them will apply to the your area as well. Um, so that is one source, and then once you know, oh, these models are probably the candidates for me, then you can actually test them yourself.
So do they have right now any place where we can go and make a search against all the model available in the market right now? It's a marketplace for the models basically. जहाँ
Yeah,
पे
yeah. There are many such companies. Like Hugging Face is one of them.
Honey Face? Oh, Hugging
Hugging,
Face. Oh, Hugging Face, right?
yeah. So that is one of them. That's quite old and popular. But there are other such kind of repositories or marketplaces available.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
मोहन जी
Ola, Olama is there.
मोहन जी का क्वेश्चन है।
सर ये ऐसे बोलिए कि जैसे ओपन सोर्स मॉडल है तो मॉडल ओपन सोर्स का वेट ओपन है, जैसे ट्रेनिंग डेटा भी ओपन है उनका। तो
Yeah.
मेरा जैसे ट्रेनिंग डेटा ओपन है तो डेटा कैसे देख सकते हैं, कैसे किस फॉर्म में देते हैं वो, मतलब ट्रेनिंग डेटा ये रिपोजिटरी में रहेगा, कैसे रहेगा, इफ समबडी वांट टू सी दैट?
Yeah, probably like they would expose some kind of, let's say, S3 object or something like that.
ओके
Yeah, data would be available in, or like if it is open, then it should be available in some kind of a raw format.
ओके थैंक यू।
तो आगे बढ़ते हैं. So here they say that vast majority of open source models are open weight only. So you need to be careful. Many models are released under their own unique licenses. तो licensing का अलग issue है. अभी तक क्या था, open source वर्ल्ड में there are licensing was very complex. So you must have heard of this Apache 2, MIT license, GNU license, and all that. And companies have to actually read these license agreements and like evaluate which one is allowed within their company, which one gives them, like, let's say, may land them into some kind of legal trouble. Now models also open up another set of their own licenses. तो मेटा का उसने कोई एक लामा 2 कम्युनिटी लाइसेंस एग्रीमेंट बनाया है, लामा 3 का अलग से लाइसेंस एग्रीमेंट है. But this author says that over time, community will converge towards some standard licenses. Like Google and Mistral, they are already converging to use Apache 2.2. Sham?
सर ये लाइसेंस पे लाइक है, मैंने आज तक कभी लाइसेंस पढ़ा नहीं, मतलब कभी जो ओपन सॉफ्टवेयर भी होते हैं, तो ऐसा इफ इट इज ओपन सोर्स देन what they mention about the license anybody can use, like which things we have to careful about, like
हाँ, तो लाइसेंसेस में क्या है कि उसको आप कैसे यूज कर सकते हो, उसका क्राइटेरिया लिख के देते हैं. लाइक somebody worked hard and created this open source, and now let's say if you start selling it for commercial purpose, right? So some licenses, they say that you can use it for your own purpose, for your own business, but you cannot have a reseller service on top of that.
now makes sense, sir.
तो उस तरह के constraints हैं. Or some say that, oh, if you are using it, then you have to contribute back to, like, if you make any contribution, if you make any changes to this open source code, then you need to actually contribute it back to the community. So, yeah.
Got it. Very nice.
So, yeah, some questions that you need to figure out is, does the license allow commercial use? Right? Example दे रहे हैं कि मेटा का जो फर्स्ट लावा मॉडल आया था, then it was under non-commercial license. You cannot use it for commercial purpose. Are there other restrictions? Like Llama 2 and Llama 3 ने कहा था कि you cannot use for more than 700 million monthly active users. So, like, they are okay actually if smaller companies use it, but if, let's say, Facebook's competitor uses it for their own purpose, and they are like making tons of money, they would want their own share from that. And the other thing is, like, does this license allow using models output to train or improve upon other models? So this is actually another very big area. It's a concept called model distillation. So model distillation में क्या होता है? Somebody trained a model. You create some labels basically. You provide your own input. You record its output, and just with the input and output, you're training another model.
हो गया भाई.
Hitesh, म्यूट करोगे?
चुप हो जाए यार, क्या हो गया? बहुत हो गया भाई, 20 मिनट 25 मिनट हो गए.
Videsh, can you mute please?
We cannot
शांत हो
hear
जा.
you.
जाएगा जिसमें. उधर से खोल दे, बाहर से.
Admin can
हमें हमें बोल रहा हूँ शांत हो जाओ.
उधर से खोल दे.
हाँ 20-25 मिनट हमको भी हो गए करीब.
हाँ.
बाहर से खोल दे. हाँ बस.
Hitesh, can you hear us? Okay.
Barely
Yeah,
able to
yeah.
hear.
Okay, so ये मॉडल डिस्टिलेशन वाला जो प्रोसेस है, मतलब जो मेरे को समझ में आया वो इस तरह से है कि जैसे मतलब जितने लोग जो यूपी बोर्ड थे उनको याद होगा कि एग्जाम के टाइम पे कुंजी आती थी. तो कुंजी क्या होती थी कि पूरे टेक्स्ट बुक का सार होता था उसके अंदर, मतलब 25-30 पेज के अंदर सब कुछ मेन कॉन्सेप्ट सब उसमें आ जाते थे, एंड यू जस्ट रिमेमराइज दैट एंड देन यू कैन पास द एग्जाम, right? So same is the process of model distillation. Model is the actual textbook. Distillation is you can say just that कुंजी कि उसने जो है केवल उसका इनपुट आउटपुट मेमोराइज कर लिया है, and then that produces a smaller model, and it provides the same output, similar output, actually not exactly same, but for certain use cases similar output, but it's a very small model. So again, from the perspective of licensing, is that allowed or not? So that is another thing that you need to figure out. So आगे बढ़ते हैं. They're talking about inference service. So I think हमारे ये जो WhatsApp ग्रुप है उसमें डिस्कशन हुआ था, what is inference service, what is versus model API. So essentially they are the same thing. So it's a like कोई भी सर्विस या माइक्रो सर्विस आर्किटेक्चर में जो कॉन्सेप्ट होता है ना कि there is service and then that service exposes an API through which people can interact with that service. So a service that hosts the model is called inference service or inferencing service sometimes, and then it can have multiple APIs, multiple facades or interfaces through which people can interact with it. One is model API. Model API is one like you're giving a prompt, you're getting a response. That's a model API. But then there are other APIs that are also possible. Fine tuning API. Like you can also send your data and you can ask the model to fine tune itself. And then there are evaluation APIs. So many. So yeah, basically it's not all the models or not all the inferencing services expose all of these different kinds of APIs, but some do. So next point they're making is where is this inference service hosted? So um, if the if let's say the model developer, they don't want to make it open source, they want to, let's say, make money out of that. So they are also, many model developers are also model service providers. So they will host it themselves, and you can only interact with the model through one of these APIs. Uh, model providers model providers open source the weaker model and keep their best models behind paywall. So that is another popular kind of way. They will make the cheaper model available or weaker models available for free, but for premium latest models you have to pay some premium. Was there a hand up? Yeah, Sham.
सर मेरा एक क्वेश्चन था ये एपीआई पर, इसमें जैसे कि जेमिनी का भी अपना मॉडल है, जेमिनी मॉडल है, वो लामा मॉडल है. नाउ दे ऑल मॉडल्स आर अवेलेबल ऑन द एज्योर. सेम मॉडल अवेलेबल ऑन द Amazon Cloud Foundry also.
Yeah.
So that means like Azure and Amazon writing API on top of the model, or like a model provider itself writing the API and they directly expose some endpoint to the cloud like this to the cloud provider. That's where I got confused last time when we are discussing the WhatsApp.
Acha.
Like,
So actually, this API is not a big deal. It's a very simple, thin wrapper on top of model. Where the challenge comes in is scaling it. Let's say अगर Azure provide कर रहा है कोई particular model और AWS provide कर रहा है, that means they must be ready to serve, let's say, millions of requests per second, right? If it's a popular model that everybody wants to use, then they should have the infrastructure and all the design to support millions of requests per second. So I think that's where their this the cloud providers IP comes in. They would still like if they're using commercial model, then they'll probably pay some money to that commercial provider, the model developer also. But if they're hosting an open source model, then I think all their investment in the infrastructure, they'll charge for that.
So yeah, apart from this scalability, what are the other factors we should use go for cloud or on-prem models?
So Deepak, I think cost तो एक होगा कि अगर let's say you're only making 100 requests in a day, right? अब वो 100 requests के लिए पूरा एक model host करके रखो, that's costly, right? Maybe calling an API is cheaper for you. दूसरा है कि are you using just plain vanilla model or are you fine tuning? तो fine tune किया है तो maybe you want to host it yourself because commercial में फिर like you'll have to upload your own model, you cannot take advantage of multi-tenancy benefits, right? So yeah, I mean there are, I think at the end of the day it comes down to cost and performance.
एक वो वाला भी ना लीगल implications की जो बात करी थी.
Yeah, that's actually another big one. So if let's say you want to send some in your prompt some sensitive data, and you don't want that data to be like going out of your network boundaries, then hosting is the only option that's available to you. And that also applies at the cloud provider level also. So like there are these regulations, right? Like GDPR, CCPA. They say that customers' data cannot go beyond that geographical area. So you cannot just host a model, let's say in Virginia data center, and serve a European customer. You have to actually host that model in a European within the boundaries of that GDPR. So customers can send their sensitive data also. So
So
there is no
Manoj,
limitation.
extending the question what Deepak asked, right? I guess the question is going toward that more and more companies will start asking for having their own business centric data hosted by themselves, right? Even though you said कि उनका अपना जो volume है इतना ज़्यादा नहीं होगा,
Mm-hmm.
100 request, maybe 10,000 requests per day, still it's not a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
पर वो क्या कंपनी बोल रही है कि हमारा डाटा प्राइवेसी के अंडर में बाहर कहीं जाना नहीं चाहिए।
Yeah.
जैसे मैं एक इंश्योरेंस के लिए भी काम करता हूँ, तो वो इंश्योरेंस कंपनी अपना डाटा कहीं नहीं देगी, सो दे वुड नॉट लेट यू इवन हिट ए रिक्वेस्ट ऑन द चैट जीपीटी इवन।
Yeah.
तो अभी उनके लिए अगर इफ यू आर जस्ट ट्राइंग टू बिल्ड ए सोल्यूशन कि जहाँ पे एआई बेस्ड आप उनको सजेस्ट कर सको, प्रेडिक्शन दे सको, या करंट डाटा के लिए आप जस्ट टेस्ट बेस्ड सर्च दे सको पूरे डेटाबेस के थ्रू, then you need to host that kind of a SLM kind of a model, a small
Yeah.
language model, right?
Yeah.
तो उसके लिए then you are saying that you need to go through all kind of a legal bindings also by yourself because you are responsible one. Second
Mm-hmm.
one is any query what's happening on that model want to be retained within the boundaries, then in that case the query is going to those models and staying within the boundaries itself, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you have to solve the scale challenges also, right? And cost challenges. So like all these things that apply to distributed systems, right? That you can do auto scaling, like when you don't have any load, you can just host it on one or two machines. But when there is more load, then you can auto scale your infrastructure. And batch versus online, right? Maybe you can say that, oh, I have just my business is like that I can just run all the inferencing jobs within those 4 hours, and then for those 4 hours I can like borrow a machine from like other workloads and run this inferencing, and then after that I unload the model and use the machine for something else. So yeah, those kind of
Yeah, so I think you are right basically. Yes, your point of scaling the model is very important. कि आप स्केल कैसे करोगे? I know that the companies जैसे जिस कंपनी में अकाउंट that company is 130 year old.
yeah.
So they have the digital data for last around 35 years. So 35 years, because we were having internal discussion, is it possible to feed that data into a model to create a kind of AI model by themselves where we can go and query? Was a big question, but I don't think that we are there yet. That the company should be a small company can have their own data kind of thing. It will be very expensive, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So actually, that's what the next section is. Uh, so this section, there are 7 axes to consider when you are self-hosting or using a cloud provider's hosted model. So one is data privacy. We talked about this. If you cannot send data outside of the organization or sending certain data outside the borders, we talked about that, right? So then that rules out some of these options. And then there is that risk that API provider will use your data to train its model, even though they say that we will not, but like technically it's possible, right? Because the cloud provider, their policies might also change. So they're giving an example of Zoom. Zoom ने पहले बोला कि we will not use your data to train our model, but later they changed their policy, started using that. Other thing is uh, like the problem is that the AI models can memorize the training sample. So let's say you provided your data, you say, yeah, I mean, if you're using it for training, what's the big deal, right? My data is still not going to be like, it's going to be aggregated, it's only going to improve rates, improve the model for everybody. My data is not going to be exposed, but that's not always true. AI models can memorize the actually the training data. So the actual data, like the insurance data and all that, it can be exposed through, like after you train the model, that model can expose that to other customers. Yeah. Can we have a question?
Yeah, sir. Because every time, like in our cyber security space, the customer asks whether we are using AI. Then they ask this common question: are their data going to use for the training in your
Yeah.
AI? That's the very first question they ask. As such, we use we have to formulate answer to satisfy them. Like we are using Azure OpenAI, for example. Then we believe Azure policy. Like they will not using our data for training, and
Yeah.
same they say but yeah, this is the big number one question we always get whenever the customer ask they do our cyber security review.
Mhm. Yep. दूसरा कंसिडरेशन है डेटा लीनेज एंड कॉपीराइट का। तो यहाँ पे उन्होंने एक इंटरेस्टिंग पॉइंट दिया है कि जो पेटेंट ऑफिस है, दे मेड इट, सो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल इफ इट्स एन एआई असिस्टेड इन्वेंशन it becomes hard to patent, but they have made it clear that it's not unpatentable. So basically, it is, you can still patent some AI assisted inventions. You have to just show that there have been significant human effort involved. So it depends on whether the human contribution to innovation is significantly enough to qualify for a patent. So एक वो भी consideration है if you want to patent your IP, and if you are going to use a model, then whether you will still be patentable or not. Concern over data lineage for driven towards fully open models. Yeah. कोई दीपक कुछ comment था?
हाँ, लेकिन हम लोग अपने जो हमारा प्रॉम्प्ट इंजीनियरिंग में है तो उसमें वी कैन पेटेंट द प्रॉम्प्ट, राइट? मींस व्हाटएवर फॉर्मेट एंड्रॉइड
Yeah, yeah,
फॉर्मेट।
I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen that people patenting the prompts or copywriting. So sometimes,
Patenting the prompt? That's
यस,
yeah,
weird.
यस,
That's very weird. But
it,
patent, sorry, the prompt is just like language, the way I'm talking.
यस, यस। सी पहले जो है जो हम कोड लिखते थे वो हमारा इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रॉपर्टी होता था, राइट?
yeah,
अब जो प्रॉम्प्ट लिख रहे हैं वही कोड है। तो उसको भी हम एक इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रॉपर्टी की तरह आजकल इंडस्ट्री में ट्रीटमेंट शुरू हो गया है, बट आई डोंट नो कि ये
yeah.
किस फॉर्मेट में जा रहा है।
Yeah, no, I have an example actually. My company uses a third-party hosted model, and we have a contract with them that any prompts that actually, so we use a third-party company to host the model and also write the prompts for us. So we have a contract that all the prompts that they're writing, we own those prompts, they own the model. So we can take those prompts and tomorrow start calling another model. So yeah, all these things are part of the contracts now. Who owns that? Contract is like, as Deepak rightly said, right? Prompt is just like code.
तो मतलब आपका प्रॉम्प्ट वो किसी और को शेयर नहीं कर सकता।
Yeah, हमारा prompt को किसी और को share नहीं कर सकता. Exactly.
I'm still not convinced. मैं बस से जा रहा हूँ, मैं जा रहा हूँ बस से। अभी क्या बोलोगे उसे?
नहीं, actually, what you're talking about is like simple prompts, like one line, two line prompts, right? The actual commercial applications, they write like 5, 6 page long prompts. They provide all the contextual data. So those prompts are more like they have a lot of companies' IP.
Oh, you're saying that it's just like copywriting a blog.
Yeah, 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 you can say that.
Okay.
Okay, so ये data lineage का क्या है? वही same training data का क्या है कि like the concern, right? What data did you train? Where did that data come from? So if you care about that, then yeah, you need to figure out what was the lineage of the data that's used for training the model. So here, I think we talked about this earlier, right? If you use an open source model, that infringes on copyrights, the infringed party is unlikely to go after the model developer. More like they and more likely to go after you. तो लेट्स से वो न्यूयॉर्क टाइम्स का आपने जो है कॉपीराइटेड डेटा पकड़ उससे ट्रेन किया किसी ने मॉडल ओपन सोर्स मॉडल and if you start using that open source model even though you did not know that they used that copyrighted material, New York Times will go after you that you are using their a model that's trained on their copyrighted data.
Oh man, that's scary.
Performance is another concern. So there's like companies keep their strongest model behind APIs and open source the weaker model. But gradually, like in last couple of years, that gap is reducing. So here यहाँ पे इन्होंने दिखाया कि green line है how the performance of the open source models or open weight models is increasing. All these green dots are different open weight models. And then closed source models, they're all red. So their performance is of course increasing, but the gap between open and closed source models, their performance is reducing actually. Yeah, Nihat.
So question is, can they reverse engineer? Let's say, how do they know that let's say somebody didn't disclose? How do they know that, okay, these are the data, this model is getting trained? Can somebody reverse engineer that?
Probably they can figure out, like if let's say there is some exclusive story that was only available on New York Times, and somehow your model knows about that, right? So then, how did your model read that? You need to prove that, right?
Okay. So even somebody is doing web crawling or training the model, that also.
No, web crawler, let's say if a web crawler is not allowed to read that information, right? It's behind paywall. And still, like it's your model knows about that knowledge. या फिर बुक है किसी ने कोई स्पेसिफिक रिसर्च की हुई है, they have put it behind paywall or something. So if your model, if they can prove that your model has all the information that was behind paywall, but your model still somehow knows about that.
Makes sense.
Do it, yeah.
Thank you.
So what is this?
Sorry. Yeah, please continue.
What is this paywall? Like Ankur was also about to tell this word paywall. Like I don't hear. What is paywall?
कि you go to let's say public link और वो आया था कि वो subscribe to our site only then they'll allow you to access the content. Like Medium पे if you don't have a subscription, they don't allow you to read any articles, right? So that is paywall.
नहीं तो इसमें ऐसे मीडियम के बहुत सारे आर्टिकल्स होते हैं ना जो कि पेड होते हैं, तो अगर आपका चैट जीपीटी कोई ऐसा रिस्पॉन्स देता है जो कि मीडियम के पेड आर्टिकल से आ रहा है, तो इज इट इलीगल और दे हैव पेड दैट सब्सक्रिप्शन टू गेट दैट इन्फॉर्मेशन?
हाँ, so most likely it will be illegal unless ChatGPT or whatever OpenAI has a contract with Medium's company that केवल $5 सब्सक्रिप्शन लेके आपने उसका सारा कंटेंट चुरा लिया, I think they won't allow that, right? They have to make a specific contract कि you can train your model on this data.
तो क्या this is the conclusion of this discussion, like if there is some paid content on internet, that information is not available through ChatGPT?
Yeah, it should not be.
It should not be.
Should not be.
सर पेड की बात नहीं है, अगर फ्री कंटेंट भी है और अगर ऑथर है उसने परमिशन नहीं दी है ट्रेनिंग की, राइट, उसने सिर्फ पढ़ने की परमिशन दी है इंडिविजुअल को, राइट, तो भी अगर आप ट्रेन कर रहे हो गलत है. रिसेंटली अभी शायद एलन मस्क का कुछ लोग like these movie makers and all, they're claiming that their multimodal models are trained on the movies and all, and movie makers have never given that permission. तो काफी बड़ी कंट्रोवर्सी हुई थी इसकी, ये जितने भी बड़े-बड़े मॉडल मेकर्स हैं, they are secretly using, they have been using secretly these movies for training purpose for long time.
Yeah.
ये तो बड़ा मुश्किल है ना कैच करना. सपोज करो मैंने एक ले लिया सब्सक्रिप्शन और मैं इसको रीड कर रहा हूँ और उसी वक्त मैं उस पे एक कंट्रोल पी करता हूँ एंड आई कैन कन्वर्ट दैट थिंग इनटू अ पीडीएफ फाइल और वो मैं रैक के थ्रू डाल देता हूँ पीडीएफ फाइल अपने मॉडल में. आगे कंटेंट मेरा हो गया. वो
नहीं तुम्हारा नहीं बना दीपक को.
पैसे तो हमारा होगा. वो
पायरेसी हो गई सर. वो तो
पायरेसी हो गई.
अरे हम उसमें बेस थोड़ी ना हैं।
नहीं सर, गोइंग फॉरवर्ड जो जो भी मूवीज अगर अपलोड हो रही हैं जो भी मीडिया पे, आई थिंक दे नीड
हाँ,
टू
जब
कंट्रोल देयर
अगर मैं
कंटेंट
वो
कि
मूवी
कौन देख सकता है, कौन नहीं देख
ऐसा
सकता।
क्रिएट करके यूट्यूब पे या किसी और चैनल पे देख सकता हूँ, तो मैं इसको सिमिलरली रिकॉर्ड भी कर सकता हूँ, राइट?
नहीं
सर
वो
उसको उसको प्लेजरिज्म बोलते हैं उसको आज की दुनिया में। वही सेम उसमें अप्लाई होगा। आपने कॉपी किया है, इधर लेके आए, वो दैट्स प्लेजरिज्म, नॉट एक्सेप्टेबल। कॉलेजेस में
लेकिन
बहुत होता है।
नहीं, नहीं, एग्री, लेकिन उसमें भी चक्कर होता है ना कि अगर मैं 3 जगह की कॉपी करके अपनी कॉपी बना रहा हूँ, तो वो फिर मेरी अपनी कॉपी कहलाएगी, राइट?
यस, आई थिंक दैट यू कैन डू दैट, या।
नहीं, बट दैट नो, दैट्स नॉट, दैट्स स्टिल नॉट योर कॉपी। अगर आप 3 मूवी कॉपी कर रहे हो अलग-अलग और उनको एक कंबाइन करके कहो ये
मूवी
मेरी
को कॉपी
मेरा
करके
वर्ज़न है।
मैं जो है अपनी एक मूवी बनाता हूँ, तो आई डोंट थिंक कि वो कोई बोलेगा कि दिस इज़ अ पायरेटेड मूवी।
नहीं, एक मूवी है अभी नई आई है, सुपरस्टार्स ऑफ मालेगाँव।
हाँ सर,
वो
उसमें
देखना।
है ये कंसेप्ट। कभी देख
तो
रहा था।
उसमें वो लोग हीरो
सुनो,
एक्टिंग करते हैं।
मेरा
देखा
साइड
आपने?
क्वेश्चन है। मेरा एक साइड क्वेश्चन है, इसी में ही साइड क्वेश्चन है।
हुँ।
राइट, वो ये कि जैसे वी टॉक अबाउट कि कोड हमने लिखा और वो कोड मेरा पेटेंट है, ठीक है। वो कोड मेरा पेटेंट है, तो इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि सेम रिजल्ट कोई और दूसरे तरीके से प्रोड्यूस नहीं कर सकता। इफ द पर्सन इज कॉपिंग डाउन माय कोड एंड राइट एंड देन यूजिंग इट, दैट्स ए वायलेशन। अगर मैं अपना कोड लिख के वही सेम रिजल्ट मैं प्रोड्यूस कर रहा हूँ, इवन दो इट माइट बी मैचिंग लाइंस आल्सो, डजंट मैटर। कोड के हिसाब से अगर मैं बोलूँ तो बोलो कि वेरिएबल्स मैंने अपने यूज किए हुए हैं, लूपिंग मेरी अपनी लगी हुई है, लूपिंग में मेरा लॉजिक लगा हुआ है, एवरी बिट ऑफ इट रिटन बाय मी मैनुअली। आई डोंट थिंक दैट्स ए वायलेशन। सेम विद द फार्मास्यूटिकल, राइट।
दैट्स राइट।
सेम मेडिसिन अगर मैं अपने रिसर्च में बना के सेम रिजल्ट में प्रोड्यूस कर रहा हूँ, देन दैट्स नॉट अ वायलेशन। सो आई थिंक व्हाट दीपक इज ट्राइंग टू गेट इनटू दैट ग्रे एरिया कि मैंने 3 जगह से कॉपी किया, मैंने मर्ज किया, बट इफ देयर आर ट्रेसेस ऑफ कॉपीराइट कोड इनटू इट, Deepak, in that case, you have a violation. If it seems like it's all original kind of thing, look like you created something on merging 3 of them, then it's yours.
या आपने 3 बुक पढ़ के चौथी बुक लिख दी, देन दैट्स फाइन।
Yes, true. Then you can do that.
लेकिन इसमें ये भी है ना कि जो मैंने 3 किताबें लिखी थी, वो भी तो मतलब चैट जीपीटी से रीड करके लिखी हैं। आजकल तो सारी बुक्स भी चैट जीपीटी से रीड करके लिखी जा रही हैं। तो मेरी वो कहाँ है? वेयर आई कैन पुट रिस्ट्रिक्शन ऑन दिस कि अब मैंने ये, क्या मैं इस तरह का बोल सकता हूँ कि ये मैंने चैट जीपीटी से क्रिएट करके कंटेंट एक किताब लिखी है। अभी जो है गोयल जी ने लिखी है एक किताब, राइट? वो उन्होंने खुद के हिसाब से लिखी है। अब सेम किताब अगर कोई चैट जीपीटी से करे, इंटरैक्ट करे, उससे चैप्टर बाय चैप्टर कंटेंट बना ले और फिर वो बोले कि इस किताब पे मेरा पेमेंट है, मतलब जो है पेटेंट है, कोई और इसको कंटेंट इसका यूज नहीं कर सकता, तो ये कैसे प्रूव हो रहा है कि उस कंटेंट का मैं ही ओनर हूँ?
हाँ, तो वही पेटेंट की बात जहाँ तक है, वो तो आई थिंक वो यूएस पेटेंट ऑफिस ने क्लियर किया है कि इफ देयर इज सिग्निफिकेंट ह्यूमन एफर्ट इन्वॉल्व्ड,
Yes.
देन ओनली इट कैन बी पेटेंटेड।
हाँ, तो
ठीक
फिर
है,
चैट
और
जीपीटी वाला नहीं माना जाएगा ना?
हाँ, नहीं माना जाएगा ना, वो एआई असिस्टेड है। और दूसरा जहाँ तक बुक लिखने की बात है, वो कोई बुक लिख सकता है, छाप सकता है। पब्लिशर्स हैं बहुत सारे, दे डोंट एक्चुअली अलाउ एआई कंटेंट, बट देयर इज नोबडी स्टॉपिंग यू फ्रॉम सेल्फ पब्लिशिंग योर ओन बुक, एंड इफ पीपल आर विलिंग टू पे फॉर इट, व्हाई नॉट?
And moreover, Deepak, there are two things what you can do is you can patent the physical entity, you can patent the idea also.
Yeah.
If this is going pertaining to the idea itself, if you are reading 3 different books and all that, coming a little bit different idea, you patent the idea, so the idea can be there. But as far as the physical entity is concerned, the writing is concerned, the writing should not be getting matching with the previous incidents. If it is matching any expert of it, then it's, I think that's a violation.
Yeah.
So let's ready for a patent war going forward. काफी कुछ होने वाला है इंडस्ट्री में।
Yeah,
वो already, I think, already started.
yeah.
क्योंकि इवन चैट जीपीटी के ऊपर कई बार ब्लेम कर चुके हैं कि यार आपने इतना मॉडल जो ट्रेन किया किसी की परमिशन नहीं दी आपने, बट व्हाट कैन वी डू। मैं भी रोज इतना यूज कर रहा हूँ चैट जीपीटी। अगर मनोज ने जो बोला उसके हिसाब से तो ये हो गया कि आप जो इन्फॉर्मेशन ले रहे हो, यू आर ए पार्टी टू द वायलेशन इन दैट केस। अभी पूरी दुनिया को कहाँ शुरू करेंगे वो लोग।
तो आगे बढ़ते हैं। तो हाँ, जो लास्ट सेक्शन था उसमें था कि for many use cases you don't need that don't need the strongest model, open source models might be sufficient, and that gap is reducing. Other things to consider are scalability, function calling, structure output, and output guardrails. So scalability can that model really scale to your needs or not? There are some models that say that, oh, you can only call one prompt at a time. We will not support multiple concurrent prompts. So for that, like they may not scale very well. Function calling, like do you have the ability to call other functions from within that model inferencing call? Like RAG का use case, for example, हो गया या फिर agentic use case हो गया. Like that they need to be able to call your some of your method or get your data to augment or enrich the original prompt. Output किस तरह का दे रहा है? Is it providing output in the format that you require? Are there any guardrails? What kind of guardrails have they provided? Like response ठीक है वो सही देगा, but is it going to be racist or sexist? Is it going to like uh, prevent that or not? तो भी आजकल जैसे Grok है, for example, it's providing probably all the factual information, but I think they have lowered the bar for of the kind of output it's generating. So it's if you ask it like in an abusive language, it's responding back in the same abusive language. Downside of using model API is that you are restricted. If you are using somebody else's hosted model and you're using a model API, of course, like you are restricted, right? That makes sense. So another thing that they say is that most of these hosted models they don't provide log props. Log props क्या होते हैं कि they will give you the answer, but it will not tell you that oh with 70% probability it's a cat and 30% probability it's a dog. So they will not give you that like granular probabilities and why they picked let's say cat as an answer for this question. Where you can use all that information, you can use that information to train your own model. So अगर आपने कोई hosted version use किया है, then they will not provide all that granular detail. You can also fine tune a commercial model if model provider lets you. So उसके लिए क्या करना होगा? They'll have to open up a fine tuning API. So if you want to fine tune and there is no fine tuning API available, then only option available to you is hosting. Was there a hand up?
No, you're fine.
Okay. So API cost versus engineering cost. I think this we talked about. If you host it yourself, of course, you have to spend on the engineering efforts. But if it's API, you have to pay per API call. So depending on your load, depending on uh, like how much effort or like what are your capabilities, you choose between the two. Okay, इसमें एक सर्वे का रिजल्ट्स ने दिया है. That's interesting. That why enterprises care about open source models. So most of the folks they care about open source model because they open source provides them more control. Like 60% of the people cited that as a primary reason that it provides more control. 30% people say that customizability, that if they want they can customize the open source model, and 10% people also cited cost. So yeah, there are various different reasons why people would prefer open source versus hosted model. Other thing is there is also a risk of losing access to commercial model. अभी आज जो है commercial model available है, you built your whole application, your whole business around it, but they for like it's at the whim of that service provider. They may or may not continue to provide that service or change it in such ways that it's not usable for you anymore. So that is another risk. On-device deployment is another factor that you'll consider. If you have to deploy on device, then you want to have like locally available answers, right? Whether that device has connectivity to internet or not, then there is no other option than to deploy your own. So yeah, इसके ये summarize किया है इस table में. What are the different parameters? And then they talk about those public benchmarks. So Ashwini, you were talking about, right? How do I know out of these hundreds of models which one might be useful for me
Yeah.
without doing a POC, right? So yeah, so you can go through these benchmarks. They evaluate all of those hundreds of models on different criteria. So I think the most interesting part of this chapter was all of that discussion. Baki, I think if it's applicable to you, like benchmarking and all that, you can read all of that on your own. And we are almost at time now. Um, they're also saying that benchmarks are also take them with grain of salt. तो कुछ केसेस में क्या हुआ है कि जो न्यूअर मॉडल है दैट परफॉर्म्स वर्स देन द older model in those benchmarks, but still the company actually released the newer model because newer model is also performing better on certain other things. So benchmarks are only looking at through one angle or from one lens. Make sure that like you understand what that benchmark is testing against. Data contamination की data leakage during training data is like the data that is you're testing against is also used for training. That's called data contamination. So that's why you want to know what training data is used. Yeah. So yeah, yeah. I think we are out of time now. So I'm just trying to wrap up this chapter. Evaluation pipeline कैसे बनाओगे अपना सोचने का कि वो it's just like common software development life cycle kind of things, right? You evaluate end-to-end output and then each component intermediate output also. So kind of doing unit testing as well as end-to-end testing. So this was the last section, how you create this evaluation pipeline. And then I think we are very close to the end. Yeah.
Manoj, it's been I think early on, so I had a glance and all that. I'm very poor in reading and all that, right? So that's why I jump into these discussions. So discussion make more sense to me.
Mhm.
But I saw a few examples. Those were very interesting example that when you're uploading PDF and all that, if you scroll back, so I think we can cover one or two examples instead of just going through theory. So with those examples, I think folks would have a lot of see here. So they are giving few examples.
Okay. Any word that I can search on?
Yeah, it was here in the PDF only, so I was just catching up with what Deepak asked. Yeah.
This
So
one?
there's an example for this one. Consider an application that extracts a person's current employer from their original PDF.
Yeah. So what they're saying is that evaluate all the components, right? So example, दिया है कि if let's say uh, consider an application that extracts a person's current employer from the resume, right? तो उसमें दो steps involved होंगे. First, you're extracting all the text from the PDF, and then you're extracting the current employer from that text. So instead of just writing a test, end-to-end test, write like test the individual steps. Is your application or model able to extract all the text from PDF or not? And then the second part is, can they detect what's the current employer?
Yeah. If the model, so let me read through it, right? So I can help you there.
Yeah.
If the model fails to extract the right current employer, it can be because of either step. If you don't evaluate each component independently, you don't know exactly where your system fails. The first PDF to text step can be evaluated using similarity between the extract test and the ground truth test. The second step can be evaluated using accuracy, given the correctly extracted test. How often does the application correctly extract the current employer? So I think the way the whole thing is reading up and all that, I have a similar case like where we build an application. वो application में क्या है कि we are uploading the invoices. So those invoices are coming out of the repair and maintenance. So the format of the invoice we don't know कि जिसने सर्विस प्रोवाइड की वो कहाँ पे लिखा उसके अंदर जो इसमें पार्ट कौन है लेबर कौन है वो सब चीजें कौन सी हैं But we have evaluated again and again just to figure it out, to fine tune it with the perfect prompt कि आप किस तरीके से किस चीज को कैसे कैच करते हो. But now reading that is giving you like 80% match of कि आपका service provider कौन है, part और labor में differentiation अगर आपको करना है, you need to give that prompt engineering kind of a thing. So I think ये पहले हम लोग cover कर चुके हैं. So that play a very important role into it. So if application evaluate your application both per turn and per task, a turn can consist of multiple steps and messages. If a system takes multiple steps to generate an output, it's still considered a turn.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's another concept, another like turn and task. Okay.
Turn. Yeah. Yeah. So then they're giving like debugging Python code example. So same thing, right? Just by looking at saying that, oh, this code is producing incorrect output, it's useful, but it would be more useful. If it could tell that by the way this line is incorrect, right? So and that you can figure out by doing this turn based evaluation. On every turn you are evaluating, is it producing the right output or not. Task based is more end to end. All right. So next week we can start chapter 5. So we need to find some other volunteer. Um, so we can also discuss on the WhatsApp group who wants to take chapter 5. Yeah,
मेरा
thank you
क्वेश्चन
everyone.
ये एक चैप्टर को पढ़ने में समझने में कितना वक्त लगता है?
Generally, like जैसे ये वाला chapter था, we covered in 2 meetings. Took me like 1.5 hour per meeting. So 3 घंटे मान लो.
अच्छा 2-3 घंटे में एक चैप्टर हम लोग मतलब समझ सकते हैं अकेले बैठ के पढ़ें तो.
हाँ हाँ.
Not
तो
easy.
डिपेंड्स ऑन कि कितना आपको पहले से आता है, कितना आपको
हाँ.
like, समझना पड़ रहा है.
Sure.
So, but yeah, 2 to 3 hours should be enough for one chapter. No, by the way, Mayank reads a lot.
बार-बार देखना पड़ता है.
Oh, yeah. Some of these books, I don't know if audiobook would make more sense or not, but if it gives you, let's say, 80% of the understanding, sure, still useful. Hmm.
ये ये मनोज जो ये आपने एक समरी वाला पीडीएफ शेयर किया था ना, ये प्रॉम्प्ट इंजीनियरिंग रैग एजेंट फ्रंट एंड का. तो ऐसे ही ये जो शुरू के चैप्टर्स हैं इनका भी कुछ है समरी का क्या इस तरह?
Somebody का PDF कौन share? I don't remember which one what I shared.
या भूल जाते हैं.
मेरे को बताना. Like I'll
I like that समरी वाला पीडीएफ.
okay.
कि उसमें क्या था कि प्रॉम्प्ट इंजीनियरिंग रैग और एजेंट्स को काफी मतलब इसी बुक की समरी है वो, और वो उसको काफी अच्छा कवर किया हुआ है.
Oh, अच्छा. Yeah, I shared one Medium article. I think किसी ने.
हाँ,
हाँ. Right.
याद आ गया. हाँ, उसी
Yeah.
का पहले चैप्टर का भी बता दो क्या है. क्योंकि आपके पास तो पेज
मैंने नहीं लिखा वो, तो I just found it on like Medium पे मिला, तो maybe same author might have published other chapters also. I don't have the link also right now. तो अगर आपके पास लिंक है तो भेज दो, आगे पीछे ढूंढ लेंगे.
ठीक है. हाँ, क्योंकि
Yeah.
उससे काफी जो अपनी ये प्रॉब्लम चल रही है ना कि पूरा चैप्टर पढ़ने में टाइम कितना लगेगा, तो वो समरी से पढ़ेंगे तो जल्दी फोकस होकर के वी कैन फिनिश इट.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you.
अच्छा,
So
कौन लगे इस दिन?
आज ढंग की शर्ट पहन के आई थी दीपक.
अरे यार, ये कपड़ा वही पहनेंगे उसमें क्या है.
Yeah, this whole session was live. That means if people wanted to see it live without participating here, they could. There were at least two people who were live watching it live when we were discussing. And this session will be recorded, so it will stay recorded. अभी ये मेरे को पता नहीं है कि उसकी क्वालिटी कितनी अच्छी होगी, या जो मेरी आवाज़ आ रही है वो रिकॉर्ड होगी या नहीं होगी, ये कौन सी आवाज़ ऊंची और कौन सी नीची रहेगी, वो सब देखना पड़ेगा, थोड़ा टेस्टिंग करना पड़ेगा. बट
Hmm.
इफ़ दिस इज़ व्हाट वी कैन कंटिन्यू, देन we will just record the Sunday sessions from this point onwards, and these will be available for
सैटरडे भी कर सकते हैं ना, वी कैन रिकॉर्ड द सैटरडे सेशन एज वेल. वो मेरे ख्याल से काफी ऑडियंस सैटरडे को भी आ रही है, संडे को भी आ रही है, और सेशन रिपीट भी हो रहे हैं, तो उसमें ऐसा नहीं हो रहा है कि
Yeah.
वी आर रिपीटिंग द सेम थिंग. चलो बाय मनोज.
इनको एक्चुअली कनेक्ट तो करना ही पड़ेगा कि एक ही सेशन में आ जाएं सब लोग. और अ, मैं उसके लिए पहले भी पूछा था, आज आपके आने से पहले पूछा था कि भाई कितने लोग ऐसे हैं जो सैटरडे छोड़ के संडे को ही आना चाहेंगे, तो अगर आ जाते हैं तो बहुत अच्छी बात है.
नहीं, दोनों दिन रखते हैं. ऐसा मेरे ख्याल से जो मतलब कुछ अपना रिवीजन भी हो रहा है. आज वाला सेशन था जो अंकुर ने दिया था, राइट, लास्ट टाइम, तो उसका कुछ एक्स्ट्रा ही सीखा आज हम लोगों ने. तो बाइबल को पढ़ रहे हैं तो बार बार पढ़ेंगे तो कुछ नया नया सीखेंगे. इट्स
हफ्ते में
गुड.
2 बार आना सबके लिए पॉसिबल नहीं होता, इसलिए जो है एक ही सेशन करना ज़्यादा अच्छा है. पर ये है कि ये जो रिकॉर्डिंग्स हैं ये आपको बाद में भी अवेलेबल रहेंगी. ये बहुत लोगों की बहुत समय से डिमांड थी. फाइनली आज मैंने इसका एक कुछ तरकीब निकाली है. अगर आप लोगों को मौका लगे ये रिकॉर्डिंग दोबारा रिवाइंड करके देखने का, तो प्लीज़ देखें, और कोई फीडबैक हो तो ज़रूर बताएं. थैंक यू, दैट इज़ ऑल आई वांटेड टू से.
थैंक यू जी.
और सर आपने कभी सब्सक्रिप्शन लिया क्या रिकॉर्डिंग करने के लिए?
नहीं,
ठीक.
एक टूल डाउनलोड किया है और अपने कंप्यूटर से ही डायरेक्टली
अच्छा, तो
यूट्यूब पर लिंक किया
मैंने
है.
देखा कि आपने अपने चैनल पे किया है. शुड वी रादर मूव टू द टेक डिस्कशन वाला चैनल पे? अप टू यू.
थोड़ा सा उसमें पंगा ये है कि जिस चैनल के ऊपर आपको आप अपना लाइव जाना चाहते हो, आपको उस
हाँ.
पर अपनी शक्ल अपना वो सब कुछ अप्रूव कराना पड़ता है. तो
हाँ,
अ,
अच्छा अच्छा.
या तो अपना कोई डॉक्यूमेंट
ठीक है.
अपलोड करना पड़ता है, या कुछ 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 है.
अच्छा,
अब चूंकि
ठीक है.
वो चैनल मेरा नहीं है, तो मैं उसके लिए सब कुछ कर नहीं पाया. अपने पर्सनल
अंडरस्टूड.
चैनल के लिए मैंने लाइव ओपन कर लिया, क्योंकि
ठीक.
लाइव अगर आप लाइव स्ट्रीम करना चाहते हो अपने चैनल पे, तो आपको कुछ कुछ दिखाना पड़ता है, अपनी शक्ल दिखानी पड़ती है,
आइडेंटिफिकेशन,
वो सब
हाँ.
करना पड़ता है.
केवाईसी करना पड़ेगा.
आप चला के देखो, अगर आप करके देखो, आप अपने लेवल पे जो टेक
ठीक है.
डिस्कशन वाला है उससे करके देखो. अगर उससे हो जाता है तो लाइव चैनल तो कनेक्ट करने में तो कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. मैं लॉगिन यहाँ से कर सकता हूँ, जैसे मैं अपने लॉगिन पे अपने चैनल पे लॉगिन किया है उस पर भी कर सकता हूँ.
ठीक है.
सर उस टूल की लिंक भेजना सर, क्या है, थोड़ा एक्सप्लोर करेंगे.
क्या क्या भेजना?
टूल टूल जो आपने यूज किया है उसका लिंक, क्या टूल डाउनलोड किया है आपने?
ओ बी एस, सिंपल सा नाम है, ओ बी एस. और सारी दुनिया ओ बी एस यूज़ करती है. इट्स ए फ्री टूल.
ओ बी फॉर बॉय. ओके सर.
मैं लिंक
और
देता हूँ, कोई
ठीक.
दिक्कत नहीं है. ओ बी एस, दैट इज एज सिंपल एज दैट. एनी अदर क्वेश्चंस फॉर मी?
सर.
नो.
ऑल राइट, टेक केयर.